Welcome, everyone, to the Hurting Humanity channel. Some of you may not have heard, but this is going to be a common theme. France got torrential rain for 2 days, flash flooding. In other words, pop-up storms that just appeared, and they literally put parts of France underwater. And it's getting little attention because, of course, why would it get attention? I mean, the plan is that the majority of countries are going to be put underwater. We've all seen the maps that they've shown us in the past, whether it's in predictive programming in the films or even some of the stuff that is leaked government documents of the East Coast underwater, the West Coast underwater, new maps of the countries and what they're going to look like. We know about weaponized weather when it comes to HARP and it comes to these hurricanes that are coming through. We know about Tesla's earthquake machine, but we also need to pay attention to these pop-up floods because they can literally put towns underwater. And this major flooding that's going on in France, again, conveniently is causing not just significant damage, but significant damage to the infrastructure and to the electrical grid, because that's what all these things are going to continue to do. And you're supposed to believe, of course, that this is all naturally occurring because of carbon emissions, and a cow farting in the ocean somewhere is suddenly going to make the planet start having insane weather patterns all over the place. While meanwhile, you see all these wicked people who are chumming it up with each other, telling you that we need to change how we live because the climate is being affected, when they're the ones who are doing this using weaponized weather. But let's take a look at the horror that's going on over in France.
The regions hit by this week's torrential rains are rarely flooded. The water is now receding, but residents are still stunned by the amounts of rain that fell in their town and the risks they faced only hours ago. This business owner, his employees and clients were trapped in his store.
We called for help from a policeman who was outside so he would break the window. We couldn't break it from the inside. When we threw a chain at it, it bounced back. Imagine the anxiety.
Rivers burst their banks, roads and railway tracks were covered with muddy water. More than 6 months of rain fell in 2 days. On Friday, Prime Minister Michel Barnier called to improve natural disaster management through more EU cooperation.
We must prepare with climate change to face risks and disasters in all areas more frequently. The more we prepare ourselves together at the European level, the better it will be for everyone.
Homes and infrastructures were damaged. Insufficient planning led to animals being swept away. The water is now receding. Experts are beginning to assess the damages, with residents and professionals saying they will show solidarity and face the crisis together.
So that's an absolute, it's horrifying, right? Because this could happen overnight. With the hurricanes and things like that, it doesn't make it any better. But they tell you, hey, there's a hurricane coming. Now, what are you going to do, right? You could only do so much. If you decide to stay, you decide to leave, you could eventually, you could lose your home. But literally, these are pop-up storms. These flash floods are just coming out of nowhere. And does that sound familiar to you? These pop-up flash floods? Because it should. Because if you don't remember this year, Dubai had this massive downpour that flooded out its city. And it put a lot of things underwater. And it forced them to kind of come in and change the infrastructure around a little bit. And when it happened, people like me said, wait a minute. You're talking about flash flooding in Dubai. Dubai is a really dried out spot. But you know what else Dubai is known for? Dubai is one of the only places that openly admits to cloud seeding. So it was an important opportunity when Dubai got flooded for people like me to come out and talk about how they can cloud seed. So, of course, naturally, the mainstream media had to come out and say things like Dubai flooding sparks cloud seeding questions. What is it? And does it work? And a light bulb went off in my head and I said, maybe people will start waking up now and realize that the government has the ability to make it rain. So then the question about droughts and all these other things that we see of places drying up should automatically be removed from the equation, because we should say, well, if the government can make it rain, first of all, should we allow them to have this technology? And even if we do, then we should all be in agreement as human beings that we should make sure there's never any droughts, right? Well, that's what the goal of the cloud seeding is, right? They were even telling you, here's why experts don't think cloud seeding played a role in Dubai's downpour, because they didn't want people out there to think that they were correlated with each other. But Dubai actually saw 2 years worth of rain in 24 hours. So naturally, people like me took that opportunity to teach people about cloud seeding and how it is real, how it's not a conspiracy, okay? And we could see cloud seeding every single day. That's the hardest part, I think, to get through to these people, because when they see a clip like this, what goes off in their head then when they show you contrails, right, which are really chemtrails, and they show you cloud seeding, and then you look up in your sky? Can you not correlate that what I'm about to play for you right now is one and the same? Here they are openly bragging in Dubai about how they have the ability to make it rain. But then, of course, when they decided to flood Dubai out, they wanted no credit for that, because they said, wait a minute, now people might think that we're actually, going after our civilians. And that could be a problem, because they could come after us. There's more of us, or excuse me, more of them than us. And also keep in mind during this clip how they show you a lot of the clouds being formed around antennas. Around, because we always think of the cloud seeding from the planes, and that is true. But what about the correlation between these towers in the clip that they show you and being able to steer these storms? Oh, right, because they do work together.
How is the UAE making it rain? The process is called cloud seeding. The UAE has been leading the effort to seed clouds and increase precipitation. The country is located in one of the hottest and driest regions on Earth, where rainfall remains at less than 100 millimeters or 3.9 inches a year on average. So, how does it actually work? The salt canisters attached to the plane's wings release salt nanoparticles into the clouds. This stimulates and accelerates the condensation process and produces droplets big enough to fall as rain.
In January 2015, the UAE cabinet approved the UAE Green Agenda for 2030, aimed at building a green economy. Proponent of cloud seeding technology, they used it to manipulate weather, to protect farming areas, and to guarantee clear skies for key events. The UAE performs around 1,000 hours of cloud seeding to enhance rainfall in just 1 year. And it's all controlled in this building, the National Center of Meteorology in Abu Dhabi, where they track the whole process. We met with a cloud seeding expert to explain how the seeding process works.
We wait the forecast. When we have a good chance for a cloud, we send the aircraft to that location. It go under the cloud. In the first stage of the cloud, there is good updraft at that time, start to release all the salt, and with the good updraft, of course, it will go inside the cloud and start to condensate, and the droplets will become bigger and start to rain.
The center manufactures a salt substance that helps enhance rainfall. They put them in what they call flares.
Operation 219.
We also spoke to one of the weather forecasters. He explains how the operations work.
We align our pilots to be on the airports and tell them when to be at the airport. So as expected, we wait for the clouds to appear on the radar, and there we have our pilots talking to us. Let me know if there is any updrafts in your area.
This is a sample plane here at the National Center of Meteorology, but the real planes fly out from the runways in Al Ain.
We have around 110 automatic weather stations. It gives us data, like meteorological data, every 15 minutes.
The information on the screen tracks wind, speed, and direction, while satellite imagery monitors clouds to track fog and dust.
Anything passing over the country, we can see it from the satellite, especially like the clouds.
And this is the map of the UAE.
So this is a frightening reality that we're living in, but what's even more frightening is that we actually have to yell and scream to people to convince them that this is real. When they admit on the news, right, that this stuff is real, that cloud seeding is real, it's not a conspiracy, right? They've admitted before, we've talked about all the documentation with weather manipulation and weather modification, right? So this is all out there, that it's real and it exists. So what is so hard for people to wrap their heads around? That's what I ask myself every day. Is it really just the notion of, well, they would never do that to us? Because I look every single day and I see people who are so upset about all of the people in politics. The left hates the people who are on the right. They want to jump off, I can't say that, but they don't want to live in a country with Donald Trump as president, and the other people don't want to live in a country with the libs are in power. So couldn't we see the government using this technology against us? Right? I mean, think about if we connected the dots with all the things going on in the world, right? The common themes of a new infrastructure is numero uno. They keep talking about how we need a new infrastructure. And it's one of those words, I guess, that puts people to sleep. So people hear that and they're like, I don't know what that means. It's like new infrastructure. What does that mean? They're going to paint the building or something? I don't know what that means. Put in a new HVAC system? New infrastructure means a whole new Shazam, a whole new ball of wax, right? Kind of like how all the infrastructure was put in place. The third industrial revolution, right, with railroads, and this was probably shocking to people before there were ever railroads. They're like, oh, what the heck's a railroad? We don't need that. We don't want that. Power lines? We don't need that. We don't want that, right? Well, they know that a lot of people don't want anything that's going on right now to change as far as the way that we live. Because why would people, other than, of course, the mainstream media constantly onslaughting us with propaganda, we'd all like that to change. But as far as the way the world is run, everybody's been pretty okay with it. But they want you to think that it needs to change. So what do? They let criminals out of jail. They literally pay people to go punch people in the face in New York City. They show you on the news every single day people robbing and looting people's homes and stores and, of course, never getting arrested for it, right? Because the solution, of course, is AI governance, but the infrastructure has to be changed, right? Which means the electrical grid has to be changed, which means every single thing has to go and be rebuilt. So what's the best way to do that, right? If people aren't going to be on board and say, I don't want to change, my house, I don't want to change, I'm not going to do that. Well, you flood them out. You put them underwater, right? And if you survive it, well, the government comes in and says, look, this is the new infrastructure. And you will have a choice to make. Will you be on board with it, or are you going to continue to live with no electricity, with mud on your face, with no clean water, right? You're going to get put in a spot where they're going to force you into compliance. That's what they're doing. So they're putting places underwater strategically. Because to bring in new infrastructure, if you use weaponized weather over and over and over again, these buildings are going to eventually crumble. They're not going to be able to stand anymore, like most of the homes we see in these hurricanes that are just going right down the road, right? They completely come out of the ground and float away. I mean, if you were going to ask somebody to write a blueprint of how you could force everybody into a completely new way of living, into new cities, into camps, right? The FEMA camps, right? Nobody's going to sign up for it. Nobody's going to go, I'll get out of my house and go live at a FEMA facility. But if you put everybody underwater and you blame it on the boogeyman and you say, oh man, the climate's just changing. So, if there's going to be floods, everyone's going to be underwater. And you're not allowed to be suspicious about it because remember that quote, you can't control Mother Nature, right? Well, if you do it this way, then of course, who becomes the hero? The same people who are responsible for doing it to you. The same people who are putting your home underwater. The same people who are killing your neighbors or yourself or your families or whomever, your pets, are the ones who are going to come in with the solution. And they're going to be praised at the end of the day for their green energy. And people are going to be thrilled. Oh, we can live in these smart cities and these smart areas. And they're not even going to realize that they're living in a dystopian nightmare. They're not going to realize that every little thing that they have and use in day-to-day life are fully controlled by these people. They're just going to be happy because they're going to go, I'm just glad I have my phone again because I went a period of time without it. I went a period of time without somewhere to sleep at night. But it's understandable if those things were naturally occurring and the government came in and said, look, we're going to help everybody out. But they're not naturally occurring. The government's the one doing it to you. So they're ruining your lives. They're putting you underwater. Then they're going to come in and they're going to put you in these cities. They're going to put you in these FEMA containment centers. It's like that movie Ready Player One, where everybody's living with their virtual goggles on in these little storage units. That's what their plan is. And it's not a crazy conspiracy. The problem is that people don't want to believe it because of the propaganda that they've been fed for so long. Literally, we're at a point now, which is really scary because for those of you that have known, my work for a while, when I started and I was talking about all these things that have already happened, right? It's because there's blueprints out there. There's things you could read. There's documents, right? This is the plan, the New World Order. We've all heard about it. Then when the outbreak occurred, I was, literally like, okay, this is actually going to lead to an awakening. And it somewhat did, right? but it got intercepted by Q, it got intercepted by Trump, and people staying in the left-right paradigm. But I still thought, I'm like, well, the Democrat people out there, they've got to wake up now, right, when this happens, because we told people it was going to happen before it happened, right? So they'll probably, after, maybe coming to our channels and saying, you guys are nuts and out of your mind, maybe they'll come over and they don't have to kiss our rear ends and say, you were right. Maybe let's come over and say, okay, there is a conspiracy going on here. I'm aware of it now. What can we do together to fight against this? But what ended up happening is that occurred, and all of those people just continually yelled that we were conspiracy theorists before and we're conspiracy theorists after, and they still don't even realize how deep the hypnosis goes, because we told them first it was going to occur, then it occurred, and then after the fact, the government fed them so much propaganda about us, instead of actually, all these other things that are wrong with the world. They just constantly talk about misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories, that these people are fighting against us now. Before the outbreak, they weren't fighting against us. They were coming to our channels and laughing at us like, you guys are lunatics. You guys are crazy. I'm on the wrong side of YouTube. After the outbreak, they were coming to our channels saying, I'm going to report you. You need to be silenced. This is misinformation. And they still don't see it in their heads, how they've been groomed by the government, right? So the same people who are destroying their lives, who are attempting to murder them, they're supporting, cheering for, and drooling over, so to speak, right? It's insanity. It's utter insanity. So France is now underwater, lots of parts of France. It goes quietly unheard about on the news. You got Cuba, whose electrical grid is completely off. You have California, who's shutting off the electricity in a lot of counties in the state ahead of, wild winds, right? Telling you it's in your best interest. I mean, they are ready, and they are going, because Agenda 2030, all these things have to occur. And you look at these things and you talk about depopulation, right? This is the big thing, this weather modification, literally being able to cause floods at random all around the earth anytime they want. And they're not just doing it to go in and grab lithium here or that there. There's more to it. They're literally recreating the map of the earth by putting certain places underneath water. And they're going to continue to do it. Then they're going to round people up who survive. And you're going to go, thank you, please, can I have a piece of bread? I'll come to your containment center and I'll live there in a concentration camp for the rest of my life. And you won't even realize it until it's too late, right? And most people will die not realizing it, who will still be thinking that we're conspiracy nuts, because that's how conformed they are. Again, it's that line from The Matrix. So many of these sheeple are so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. So they will fight for their own enslavement. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.